Ladies and gentlemen, train your mind for billions, not as a chase for numbers, but as an initiation into a larger law, for the mind was never meant to crawl when it was designed to command the unseen forces of life. The moment you accept that thought is causation and feeling is the mold, you step out of the small arithmetic of survival and into the grand mathematics of creation. A mind trained for abundance does not plead, strain, or bargain with the universe, it announces. It speaks with a calm authority born of knowing that supply is not something to be earned but something to be allowed. When the mind is disciplined to think in terms of divine sufficiency, the outer world must rearrange itself, for it can do no other thing. You were never designed to struggle for crumbs when the banquet was prepared before you were born. The first act of wealth is permission, and the second is expectancy so serene that doubt dissolves on contact. The mind trained for billions does not look at circumstances and ask for permission to believe. It believes first and allows circumstances to catch up. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. When you understand that ideas are seeds and feeling is the soil, you become careful and deliberate with what you entertain. You would not sow thistles and pray for roses, nor would you indulge fear and ask for prosperity. The disciplined mind speaks to itself in tones of inevitability, saying quietly yet firmly, I move under grace, and infinite intelligence directs my affairs. Such a mind does not rush, for haste is the language of lack, and it does not linger in indecision, for hesitation is a confession of divided faith. It moves forward with inspired action, guided by an inner certainty that cannot be shaken by appearances. Train your mind to expect large outcomes, and you will notice how the body responds with a new posture, the voice with a new resonance, and the eyes with a new light. Prosperity is first a frequency before it is a form. When your inner dialogue becomes rich, the outer dialogue of life echoes it back. Words are spells spoken into the invisible, and every sentence you repeat about limitation becomes a decree enforced by law. Reverse the spell. Speak in patterns of fulfillment. Declare that your good is irresistible, that opportunity seeks you, that wealth flows through you as water flows through a channel that has finally been cleared of debris. The universe is obedient to clarity, and confusion is the only enemy of abundance. A mind trained for billions understands that generosity is not an expense, but an accelerator. What you give, you announce that you have. This announcement is heard by the invisible forces that manage circulation. When you withhold from fear, you block the stream. When you give from faith, you widen the riverbed. There is a quiet power in releasing money, praise, and goodwill without anxiety, knowing they return multiplied by law. This is not superstition, it is alignment with the rhythm of increase. Life is movement, and stagnation is a denial of life. Therefore, let your mind become fluid, adaptable, and expansive, refusing to crystallize around old limitations. You are not here to labor under the weight of other people's beliefs. Train your mind to listen inwardly, for guidance always precedes supply. The idea that carries peace and excitement simultaneously is the idea meant for you, and when acted upon, it unlocks doors you could not force open by effort alone. The mind that trusts intuition over fear walks into rooms already prepared for its arrival. You will find that the right people appear without strain, the right timing reveals itself without pressure, and resources gather as if summoned by an unseen signal. This is telepathy of alignment, the silent communication between your conviction and the universal intelligence that orchestrates outcomes. Refuse to rehearse failure, even as a precaution. The universe does not understand rehearsal, it understands acceptance. What you accept as possible becomes probable, and what you accept as inevitable becomes fact. Therefore, accept wealth as natural, success as normal, and expansion as your rightful state. Speak of money as a friend, not a problem, and it will respond accordingly. Gratitude is the great multiplier, for it signals that you recognize the source rather than worship the channel. When you thank life in advance, you collapse time and draw future good into present experience. Train your mind to be undisturbed by delay, for delay is not denial, but preparation. The unseen often rearranges countless details to deliver something beyond what you requested. Impatience disrupts this orchestration, while trust accelerates it. Stand firm in your vision without forcing outcomes, and you will feel a calm certainty settle in your chest. a knowing that cannot be argued away. This knowing is the signature of alignment. It is the feeling that says, "It is done," even before evidence appears. Once you touch this feeling, guard it carefully, for it is the womb of manifestation. The mind trained for billions also understands identity. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you consent to be. Therefore, begin to identify as a steward of vast resources, a thinker of large thoughts, a conduit for collective good. This identity will naturally express itself through decisions, habits, and associations that make it. You will no longer tolerate environments that shrink you, conversations that belittle possibility, or habits that drain your vitality. This is not rejection of others but devotion to your assignment. The world needs those who think in scales large enough to lift many, and you are invited into that role the moment you stop seeing yourself as small. When opposition appears, as it often does before expansion, greet it without alarm. Resistance is the echo of an old paradigm dissolving. Your task is not to fight, but to remain anchored in your new assumption. Speak inwardly, "All that opposes my good now dissolves into harmony," and move forward without bitterness. Bitterness binds you to the past. Forgiveness frees energy for creation. The universe responds to emotional neutrality with speed, for calm is clarity. Maintain inner composure, and outer complications resolve themselves with surprising ease. Train your mind daily, gently but persistently. Replace idle worry with deliberate vision. Replace complaint with command. Replace hope with expectancy. Do not wait for confidence to act. Act and confidence will follow as a natural consequence. The law responds to motion, and even small inspired steps activate large unseen assistance. You are never alone in your endeavors when your motives are aligned with expansion and service. Invisible allies move when you move, and doors open when you decide they must. As you continue this training, you will notice that your relationship with time changes. Urgency fades and precision increases. You act at the right moment rather than the frantic moment. Opportunities no longer feel rare but continuous because you have shifted from scarcity consciousness to sufficiency awareness. The mind that knows there is always more does not cling, rush, or fear loss. It understands circulation. It understands that what moves out creates space for what moves in. This understanding alone dissolves anxiety around money and replaces it with quiet authority. Allow your imagination to be bold and benevolent. Picture outcomes that bless you and extend outward to bless others. The universe favors visions that include more than one beneficiary. When your success uplifts many, it gains momentum beyond personal will. This is why ideas that serve humanity tend to find support from unexpected places. You are not meant to carry the weight alone. Alignment distributes the load across unseen channels of cooperation. Stand now in the awareness that your mind is the gateway through which infinite substance takes form. Train it with reverence, discipline, and joy. Refuse to speak against your own prosperity, even in jest. Jokes repeated become beliefs accepted. Speak lightly of challenges and heavily of solutions. Speak often of abundance until it feels ordinary. Ordinary abundance is the threshold to extraordinary abundance. When wealth no longer excites or frightens you, it obeys you. This training is not rigid, it is rhythmic. It flows with life, rather than forcing life. You will know you are aligned when effort decreases and results increase, when strain gives way to grace, and when you feel guided rather than pushed. This is the state in which billions are not a fantasy but a function, a natural extension of a mind that has remembered its origin. You were never meant to beg the universe, you were meant to collaborate with it. The moment you accept this partnership, your thoughts become orders, your feelings become magnets, and your life becomes a demonstration of the law in perfect operation. And as this partnership deepens, you begin to sense that thought itself is a living current, responsive and precise, moving faster than speech and farther than sight. You realize that every sustained inner assumption is silently broadcast, and life answers not to what you say you want, but to what you consistently expect. Therefore, train your expectation as you would train a muscle, not through strain but through repetition infused with feeling. Expect good news. Expect solutions before problems finish speaking. Expect resources to appear at the moment they are required. This expectancy becomes a kind of inner posture, relaxed yet alert, confident yet unattached, and the universe recognizes it as readiness. The mind trained for billions no longer dramatizes obstacles. It sees them as rearrangements in progress. Where others perceive blockage, it perceives redirection. Where others feel rejection, it senses protection. This shift alone conserves enormous energy, for resistance drains while acceptance redirects power. When something does not move, do not force it with anxiety. Pause inwardly and affirm that infinite intelligence is recalibrating the route. You will often find that what seemed like delay was a refinement, what felt like loss was an exchange, and what appeared as confusion was a clearing of outdated structures. Such a mind also understands the potency of silence. Silence is not emptiness, it is receptivity. In quiet moments, the deeper instructions surface, and they are always simple, always practical, and always aligned with expansion. Train yourself to honor these quiet impulses, even when they contradict old logic. Logic is bound to past evidence, but intuition is tethered to future fulfillment. When you follow inspired guidance with calm decisiveness, you activate unseen cooperation. Doors open not because you demanded them to, but because your alignment made them unnecessary to resist. You begin to notice that wealth, in its truest sense, seeks stability of mind. It gravitates toward those who are not emotionally dependent upon it, those who can hold large sums without fear, guilt, or agitation. Therefore, cultivate emotional neutrality around money. See it as a tool, a symbol of movement, a form of energy that amplifies intention. When money enters your life, greet it without astonishment. When it leaves, release it without panic. This equanimity signals mastery, and mastery attracts scale. The trained mind does not confuse busyness with productivity. It values clarity over effort and alignment over exhaustion. It chooses actions that feel strangely effortless yet disproportionately effective. These actions often arise after a clear inner declaration, a moment when you state inwardly, with conviction, "This is the direction," and the body simply follows. You will find that when the mind is settled, the body cooperates, and fatigue gives way to vitality. Energy is reclaimed from worry and redirected into creation. As your thinking expands, so does your sense of responsibility, not as burden, but as privilege. You understand that abundance is meant to circulate through you, not terminate with you. This understanding purifies motive and sharpens focus. When your intention includes contribution, your vision gains resilience. It can withstand criticism, misunderstanding, and temporary setbacks. Because it is anchored in something larger than ego. The universe rallies behind intentions that uplift the whole, and resistance diminishes when purpose is clear. Telepathic alignment becomes more noticeable at this stage. You think of a person, and communication arrives. You need a resource, and a conversation presents it. This is not coincidence, it is coherence. When your inner state is ordered, outer events mirror that order. Train your mind to remain coherent under pressure. Do not allow external noise to fracture your inner certainty. Calm. Persistence is more persuasive than force, and inner order compels outer order by law. You will also observe that language refines itself as your mind trains upward. You speak less of problems and more of processes. You replace absolutes of limitation with statements of transition. Instead of saying, "I cannot," you say, "I am discovering how." Instead of saying, "It is impossible," you say, "The way is revealing itself." These subtle shifts are not cosmetic, they are commands issued to the subconscious, which in turn relays them to the larger intelligence that organizes outcomes. Train your mind to see yourself as chosen, not by favoritism but by willingness. Willingness to think differently, to act when guided, to trust when evidence lags, and to persist without bitterness. This willingness is rare, and rarity creates value. When you stop competing and start aligning, you exit the crowded lanes of struggle and enter a quieter corridor where movement is swift and assistance is plentiful. The mind prepared for billions also forgives its own past decisions. Regret is a form of self-attack that anchors consciousness in what cannot be changed. Release it. Affirm that every experience has refined your discernment and clarified your desire. The universe does not punish, it educates. Once the lesson is integrated, the condition dissolves. Carry forward the wisdom, not the weight. As you continue this inner training, you may feel periods of emptiness or restlessness. Do not misinterpret them as failure. They are often intervals of recalibration, moments when old desires fall away before new ones fully form. Rest in these spaces without forcing definition. Clarity emerges naturally when you do not rush it. The trained mind trusts these intervals, knowing they precede expansion. You will find that authority replaces affirmation over time. At first, you may repeat truths to convince yourself. Later, you speak them because they are obvious. This transition marks maturity in consciousness. You no longer need constant reinforcement, for your inner state has stabilized. From this stability, decisions become cleaner, boundaries clearer, and results more consistent. Remain alert to joy. Joy is not a distraction from serious creation, it is a signal of alignment. When joy accompanies effort, you are moving with the current rather than against it. Train your mind to notice what enlivens, rather than depletes you, and adjust accordingly. Wealth grows most naturally in environments where enthusiasm is sustained without strain. And so the training continues, not as a rigid discipline but as an evolving awareness, a refinement of perception, a deepening trust in the laws that govern invisible cause and visible effect. Each day, you think a little higher, expect a little more, release a little faster, and listen a little deeper, and the momentum builds quietly, steadily, without spectacle yet with unmistakable power, until the very rhythm of your thinking begins to chang. And you recognize that discipline no longer feels like effort but like devotion. You are not forcing the mind upward, you are returning it to its natural altitude. The strain belonged to the descent into limitation, not the ascent into truth. As this realization settles, your inner dialogue softens and strengthens simultaneously. There is less argument, less inner negotiation, and more quiet decision. You decide what you accept as real, and reality arranges itself accordingly. The trained mind does not seek constant reassurance from the outer world. It understands that evidence follows conviction, not the other way around. Therefore, when results appear slowly, it does not interpret this as absence, but as incubation. Seeds germinate in darkness, unseen yet active. The mind that trusts the process does not dig up the seed to check its progress. It waters with faith and waits with composure. This composure is magnetic. It draws cooperation from people who sense your certainty without needing explanation. As you hold this inner posture, you may notice that old fears attempt to resurface, often dressed in logic or concern. Recognize them without engagement. Fear dissolves when it is observed without obedience. You do not need to wrestle it into submission. You simply decline its authority. Replace it with a higher command, spoken inwardly with calm firmness. I am guided, I am supplied, I am supported. These are not affirmations for hope, but acknowledgments of law. Law doesn't require belief to operate, only alignment. Train your mind to recognize opportunity in forms that do not flatter expectation. Sometimes wealth arrives disguised as responsibility, expansion disguised as inconvenience, and growth disguised as disruption. The untrained mind resists these forms. The trained mind evaluates them with curiosity rather than fear. It asks, what is this inviting me to become? In answering that question honestly, you often unlock doors that comfort alone would have kept closed. Your relationship with effort continues to evolve. You work, but you do not grind. You persist, but you do not harden. You remain flexible, adjusting strategy without abandoning vision. This flexibility is a sign of strength, not uncertainty. Rigid minds break under pressure, adaptable minds expand through it. Train yourself to release attachment to specific methods while remaining loyal to the outcome you have accepted as inevitable. You also begin to sense when something is complete, even before it fully manifests. There is a subtle inner click, a feeling of resolution that precedes visible closure. When you feel this, release concern and move your attention forward. Lingering after completion wastes energy meant for the next creation. Life is sequential, and each fulfilled intention clears space for another. Honor this sequence, and momentum remains uninterrupted. As the scale of your thinking increases, so does the simplicity of your needs. You require less validation, less drama, less explanation. Excess noise falls away, and focus sharpens. This is not withdrawal from life, but refinement of participation. You choose where to invest attention, knowing attention is the currency that purchases experience. Where attention goes, life follows. Train your mind to remain generous in interpretation. Assume favorable intent until proven otherwise. This assumption preserves inner harmony and prevents unnecessary conflict. Conflict consumes energy that could be directed toward creation. When misunderstandings arise, respond with clarity rather than defensiveness. Clarity resolves what force inflames. The universe mirrors this clarity with smoother transactions and fewer obstacles. You may notice that as your inner world stabilizes, others respond differently to you. Conversations become more direct, respect more immediate, and opportunities more frequent. This is not because you demand more, but because you project coherence. Coherence is persuasive without words. It signals reliability to the unseen mechanisms that distribute chance encounters and timely offers. The trained mind also releases comparison. Comparison is measurement against a moving target, and it breeds restlessness. Your path is not validated by its resemblance to another's. It is validated by its alignment with your inner guidance. When you remain faithful to that guidance, you arrive exactly where you need to be, often sooner than expected, and better equipped than imagined. Here will be moments when you are called to act before feeling fully prepared. Preparation often follows commitment, not precedes it. When guidance nudges you forward, step with trust rather than hesitation. Resources assemble around motion. Stillness born of fear stagnates. Stillness born of certainty recalibrates. Know the difference and respond accordingly. As this training continues, abundance ceases to feel like an achievement and begins to feel like a state. You carry it with you, regardless of circumstance, because it is no longer dependent on conditions. This inner abundance expresses outwardly in forms appropriate to your vision and timing. You no longer chase manifestations, you allow them to arrive. Remain attentive to the quality of your inner atmosphere. Guard it as you would guard a sacred space. Do not allow casual negativity, idle gossip, or habitual complaint to take residence. These are subtle pollutants that cloud perception and slow response. Replace them immediately with neutrality or gratitude. Gratitude restores circulation and reopens channels that negativity constricts. And so the expansion continues, not in dramatic leaps but in steady elevation. Each thought refined, each reaction softened, each expectation clarified adds to the momentum. You are not becoming someone new. You are uncovering what was always present beneath layers of conditioned limitation. The universe recognizes this unveiling and responds with cooperation that feels almost conversational, as if life itself were nodding in agreement with your inner decisions, and this agreement deepens into a kind of silent companionship with life itself, where you sense that nothing is random and nothing is wasted. Even experiences once labeled mistakes reveal themselves as calibrations, subtle corrections that adjusted your trajectory toward a larger outcome. The trained mind no longer argues with its history, it extracts power from it. Memory becomes wisdom instead of weight, and the past loosens its grip as the future gains clarity. You begin to notice that intention sharpens when emotion is purified. Desire mixed with fear dilutes force, but desire clarified by trust becomes precise. Therefore, refine your wanting. Want without desperation. Want without apology. Want without assigning conditions to how it must arrive. The universe is not constrained by your preferences for method. It is responsive to your clarity of outcome. When you release the need to control form, you allow intelligence to exceed imagination. The mind trained for billions understands timing not as patience but as synchronization. You are not waiting, you are aligning. In alignment, action feels obvious rather than urgent. You move when the inner signal is clear, and when it is not, you rest without guilt. Rest is not inactivity, it is integration. In these moments, unseen adjustments occur, and when movement resumes, it is efficient and well supported. As you practice this, you may feel an increased sensitivity to environments and influences. Certain places drain you, certain conversations dull your focus, and certain habits scatter your attention. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is discernment. Honor it. Choose surroundings that reinforce your vision rather than challenge it. The mind absorbs atmospheres, and prosperity thrives in atmospheres of order, optimism, and purpose. You will also sense a shift in how you perceive risk. What once seemed dangerous now appears merely unfamiliar. Fear often disguises itself as caution, but the trained mind distinguishes between intuition and avoidance. Intuition is calm and specific. Avoidance is loud and vague. Trust the calm voice. It will never rush you, but it will not leave you stagnant. When you follow it, you often discover that the risk was imagined and the reward inevitable. Language continues to refine itself within you. You speak with fewer qualifiers and more conviction. You stop prefacing desires with excuses or disclaimers. This linguistic confidence is not bravado, it is alignment made audible. Words spoken from alignment carry weight. They influence negotiations, inspire cooperation, and settle uncertainty. People respond not just to what you say, but to the certainty beneath it. Train your mind to recognize completion without celebration and success without intoxication. Excessive emotional spikes create equally intense drops. Maintain equilibrium. Let achievements register as confirmations rather. Then conclusions. This steadiness allows continuous expansion without burnout. You enjoy progress without clinging to it, and this non-attachment keeps the flow unobstructed. As your inner stability grows, generosity becomes instinctive rather than strategic. You give because circulation feels natural, not because you expect return. Ironically, this is when return accelerates. Life mirrors ease with ease. When giving is free, receiving is free. This mutual freedom sustains large-scale abundance. You may encounter moments when your vision outpaces your current resources. Do not shrink the vision to match the resources. Expand your trust to meet the vision. Resources are effects, not causes. When the mind remains loyal to its higher seeing, the means reorganize themselves. This loyalty is tested not by hardship, but by distraction. Stay focused. Fragmented attention weakens momentum, while sustained focus compounds power. The trained mind also understands solitude. It does not fear being alone, for it knows that solitude clarifies signal. Periodic withdrawal from noise restores precision. In these quiet intervals, reaffirm your direction, not through effortful visualization but through simple acknowledgement. This is where confidence renews itself, quietly and reliably. As alignment stabilizes, you may feel a growing sense of inevitability around your good. Not arrogance, but certainty. This certainty does not need to be defended. It speaks through consistency, calm decision making, and an absence of panic. When challenges arise, they are addressed without drama. Drama belongs to minds seeking validation. Certainty belongs to minds anchored in law. The universe responds to this certainty by reducing friction. Processes streamline. Delays shorten. Coincidences cluster. What once required persuasion now requires presence. You show up as yourself, and systems adjust. This is not because you dominate circumstances, but because you are no longer in conflict with them. Continue to refine the inner climate. Treat your thoughts as instructions, your feelings as confirmations, and your intuition as navigation. When these three align, movement is effortless and outcomes exceed prediction. You are no longer experimenting with possibility, you are operating from principle. And so the training unfolds as a living practice, dynamic yet grounded, expansive yet precise, carrying you forward without strain, without spectacle, without finality. As the mind continues to rise into wider agreements with abundance, intelligence, and power, And within these wider agreements, you begin to sense that wealth is less about accumulation and more about capacity. Capacity to hold, to direct, to multiply, and to remain centered while doing so. The trained mind expands its capacity by refusing to personalize fluctuation. Gains do not inflate the ego, and temporary contractions do not diminish identity. You remain steady, knowing that movement is natural and that balance is stored by understanding rather than control. As this steadiness deepens, you recognize that imagination is not fantasy, but rehearsal for fact. What you consistently imagine with emotional neutrality and quiet confidence begins to assemble itself through ordinary channels that carry extraordinary results. The universe prefers natural routes. It delights in delivering miracles through methods so practical they appear inevitable in hindsight. Train your mind to respect simplicity. Grand outcomes often arrive through unremarkable steps taken in the right order. You also discover that clarity increases as excess desire falls away. Wanting everything weakens focus, choosing deliberately strengthens it. The trained mind selects its intentions carefully, knowing that each sustained focus sets forces in motion. When you commit fully to one direction, you release the friction created by divided aims. This commitment feels like relief rather than pressure, because it ends inner debate. Your sense of self continues to adjust. You no longer define yourself by effort, history, or external validation. You define yourself by alignment. When alignment is present, confidence follows naturally. When it wavers, you return inward rather than seeking correction outside. This inward return is swift and effective. A single moment of recalibration can restore days of momentum. Train your mind to recognize abundance in non-monetary forms without diminishing its monetary expression. Time, health, insight, and connection are currencies that enrich every financial outcome. When these are honored, money flows with fewer complications. Neglect them, and wealth becomes brittle. Integration is the secret. Life resists fragmentation and rewards wholeness. You may notice that decisions become cleaner as emotional noise subsides. You no longer overanalyze or second-guess what feels settled. Analysis has its place, but intuition leads when stakes are high. The trained mind respects both, using reason to implement what intuition reveals. This cooperation prevents impulsiveness without encouraging paralysis. As you move in this way, opportunities no longer feel competitive. You stop racing others and start pacing yourself. Pacing preserves energy and sharpens discernment. When you are not rushing, you see more. When you see more, you choose better. This alone elevates outcomes beyond what effort alone could produce. The trained mind also releases the need to convince. You do not argue for your vision or seek approval for your direction. Those aligned recognize it. Those not aligned drift away without conflict. This natural sorting conserves energy and clarifies alliances. Collaboration becomes smoother when resonance replaces persuasion. You may find that as your inner authority stabilizes, external authority challenges diminish. You navigate systems with ease because you are not internally resisting them. Resistance invites resistance. Cooperation invites cooperation. Even boundaries, when held without hostility, are respected. Calm firmness carries a frequency that chaos cannot penetrate. Train your mind to honor completion without attachment. When a phase ends, let it end. Nostalgia anchors energy backward. Gratitude releases it forward. Thank what has served its purpose and step into what is emerging. Transition becomes fluid when not burdened by regret or fear. As your awareness expands, so does your sensitivity to subtle guidance. A thought repeated gently gains significance. A feeling that persists without agitation deserves attention. These are the signals through which larger intelligence communicates. Train yourself to listen without dramatizing. Guidance is usually quiet because it does not need to compete. You will notice that problems resolve more quickly when you refuse to narrate them excessively. Description amplifies experience. State the issue once, inwardly or outwardly, then shift attention to solution. The trained mind understands that focus feeds form. Feed what you wish to grow. Gradually, effort gives way to rhythm. You work, rest, create, release, and receive in cycles that feel natural rather than forced. This rhythm sustains longevity. Burnout is a symptom of resistance, not ambition. Alignment renews energy even as demands increase. And within this rhythm, expansion continues quietly, persistently, without declaration or endpoint, as the mind remains in training, receptive to larger visions, steadier truths, ever-widening expressions of abundance in motion, and in this continuous unfolding you perceive that your thoughts are like magnets, not idle ideas, but active attractors, pulling to you circumstances, people, and resources in perfect proportion to the clarity, intensity, and steadiness with which you hold them. The untrained mind reacts, the trained mind directs. It does not plead for results, nor does it beg for alignment. It issues quiet commands through expectation and emotion, and life obeys because obedience is law, and law does not question desire when it is unified. You will find that circumstances bend to the unwavering insistence of inner certainty more quickly than the most frenzied effort ever could. Your perception of obstacles transforms as well. Barriers are no longer threats but mirrors, reflecting only where inner coherence could be strengthened. Every problem carries a hidden instruction, a way to sharpen discernment, refine vision, and reinforce faith. When you stop resisting the message and begin interpreting it correctly, the obstacle itself becomes part of the acceleration. Life rearranges itself around your alignment, and what once felt like hardship becomes simply a step in the sequence of manifestation. Train your mind to recognize the invisible support surrounding you. You are not creating alone. Unseen hands and minds collaborate with yours in ways you cannot always measure. Synchronicities, timely encounters, and sudden insights are not accidents, but communications from the invisible. When your mind is calm, your receptivity increases, and you are able to recognize the guidance that others might miss amidst the noise. Quiet observation becomes a tool for rapid advancement, more powerful than frantic action. The mind trained for billions understands the principle of non-resistance in all forms, not as passivity, but as strategic clarity. You do not resist life's flow, you navigate it. You do not force people or situations, you align with their energy while holding firm to your own direction. This approach amplifies influence while conserving vitality, and you begin to notice that doors previously closed open effortlessly once inner opposition ceases. Resistance is often invisible, lodged in small fears, doubts, or habits. Spot it, release it, and allow the current to carry you forward. As inner confidence grows, so does the quality of choices. You begin to operate from an expanded sense of identity, one who is capable, worthy, and naturally aligned with abundance. Choices that once seemed risky now feel appropriate, because your sense of timing and receptivity has sharpened. You no longer measure against limitation, but against potential. Potential becomes your benchmark, and alignment becomes your method. Your inner life creates a natural compass that points toward opportunities you were previously blind to. In this state, giving becomes effortless and abundant, not because of obligation or expectation, but because generosity flows from the understanding of circulation. Energy must move to remain dynamic. Wealth, kindness, and influence expand when circulated freely, and the trained mind no longer fears loss. Loss is temporary, movement is eternal. When you give without hesitation or anxiety, the invisible returns it multiplied, sometimes in forms completely unexpected, and sometimes in ways that accelerate your original vision beyond imagination. The trained mind also observes its own mental diet carefully. Words, images, and ideas are the nourishment of thought. Avoid repeated exposure to fear, limitation, or scarcity, for these create corresponding manifestations. Instead, immerse yourself in narratives of abundance, possibility, and alignment. Fill the inner space with encouragement, visualization, and confident expectation. What the mind continuously rehearses in feeling and thought becomes the architecture of outer reality. You are literally building the life you occupy through sustained inner direction. Train yourself to act decisively on inspiration, Waiting for full certainty is often a trap. Action is what activates support. The trained mind recognizes a subtle inner yes and moves. This movement signals readiness to the invisible currents, and doors open that logic alone could not unlock. Inspiration is guidance disguised as impulse. Follow it and allow the ripple to carry you farther than deliberate planning alone ever could. You also begin to see the value of patience combined with urgency. Urgency not born of fear but born of clarity, sharpens focus and galvanizes energy without anxiety. You work with intensity when the signal arises, and you rest with confidence when it does not. This rhythm ensures maximum effect with minimum waste of vitality. Productivity becomes effortless because you are no longer competing with time, only collaborating with it. As alignment deepens, you notice that fear of criticism fades. You are no longer bound by the judgments of others because your inner authority has been established. Criticism is observed, not internalized. Advice is filtered through discernment. The trained mind recognizes the difference between constructive guidance and discordant noise. This discernment protects energy while preserving openness to beneficial influence. Your capacity for clarity sharpens over time. Confusion, distraction, and unnecessary worry diminish. Decision-making becomes quicker, more precise, and more confident. You stop overanalyzing because your internal compass grows stronger than external indicators. You know what is appropriate, what is possible, and what aligns, and your actions reflect this knowledge effortlessly. In these moments, you also notice an intuitive ability to perceive unseen opportunities. The mind that has trained itself to think in terms of billions does not require linear evidence. It sees patterns, connections, and potential where others see randomness. You notice coincidences as messages, synchronicities as confirmations, and obstacles as invitations to innovate. Your vision expands beyond the literal into the subtle architecture of possibility. Gratitude becomes a dominant current. It is no longer an occasional practice, but a continuous lens through which you view life. Gratitude accelerates alignment because it signals recognition of provision, reinforces expectation, and clears obstruction created by doubt or complaint. Gratitude transforms the ordinary into a catalyst for extraordinary manifestation, as it calibrates your awareness toward abundance rather than limitation. And as this process continues, the mind steadily attains a coherence so deep that the outer world begins to mirror inner alignment with astonishing fidelity. Situations that once required persuasion or effort now unfold as natural responses to your inner state. People, resources, timing, and opportunity converge effortlessly around the clarity, consistency, and expectancy that you maintain, allowing expansion to occur in a manner both graceful and unstoppable.